Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about how we trap emotions. So, like I said, we trap emotions when there's things that are too strong to handle or we just can't deal with it. But we can also inherit emotions. Emotions can be passed down from generation to generation. Like say if your grandfather trapped an emotion, they passed it on to your father, and then at conception, that trapped emotion, that energy was passed along to you. Same as your hair color, your eye color, whatever. It's passed along at the time of conception. That's a true inherited emotion. Now the way, yeah, go ahead.
Like my daughter the other day said, I think like our whole family has like weight, abnormal things going on with that, and food.
That could be.
Because they all have had like issues of sometimes anorexia, sometimes, whatever. And I think that because I always had issues and it just kind of, and my mom did, and I think it gets passed down.
Right. Right. We're definitely not blank slates when we're born. So the way you know if it's a trapped emotion, like say if you say, okay, is there a trapped emotion in the forearm? Yes. Okay, is it in column A, column B? Okay, it's column B. Is it odd or even? Okay, B2. Okay, is it failure, helplessness, hopelessness, lack of control, low self-esteem? No, 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 no. Wait a minute. Is it in B2? Yes. Is it failure, helplessness, hopelessness, lack of control, low self-esteem? No, 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 no. Okay, that's an inherited emotion. Then you ask, is it inherited failure, inherited helplessness? And then it should give you a positive response on one of those. And then if you want, you don't have to find out where it came from, but you can go ahead and say, is it here from the mother, from the father, how many generations back? And if you want, you can trace it back and find out exactly who it came from. Now, the really neat thing about clearing trapped emotions that are inherited, according to Dr. Nelson, when you clear an inherited trapped emotion, it clears it up the line. So even ancestors who have passed on, it clears it from them too. And that the only way he knew that was just from Revelation.
Also, you can find out if you possibly in your children as well.
Yes, you can, but unfortunately when you clear it, it doesn't clear it down the line. No, it clears it up the line. You'd have to ask if it's in your children and clear it from them separately. And so when you're clearing a regular trapped emotion, you roll the magnet 3 times, according to Dr. Nelson. And then for an inherited trapped emotion, you roll it 10 times. Now, I'm telling you, after I've been doing this a few years, I'm not trying to just give you a recap of Dr. Nelson's book. I'm trying to give you some of my personal insight as well. I'm not saying I'm smarter than this. I'm sure he knows all this stuff, but I'm trying to give you some of my personal insight. And I'm telling you, you roll it until it feels right. And when you're in tune, you feel the difference. You clear that emotion. It's like, that feels better. You feel that little bit of sense of relief. And then other times it's like, I'm rolling the magnet and nothing's happening. And so at times you have to do some extra work to do that, to get past that.
So when you roll it, you have to ask them if they feel better yet?
No, I'm saying you will feel it. You feel the shift, like an energetic shift. Yeah. Yeah. So you roll it till it feels right. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Question, because I wasn't looking at the paper when you did the thing, I didn't catch this route. Liver or gallbladder. When I was 36, I had a gallbladder attack and nearly had to have surgery, but they messed up the timing and I didn't. And I've been able to keep my gallbladder for the last 17 years
Right.
by drinking apple juice and taking milk thistle. But every once in a while I have this again. So the fact that this is here on the same row with panic, is there some connection between those?
There may be. That first column, according to Chinese medicine, these are the source. These are where these trapped emotions come from. In Chinese medicine, the organs produce the emotions, but those organs there is the least important part of this chart. The reason is because even if it's true that they're created in these organs, that's not necessarily where they wind up. So trapped emotions will go to an area of weakness. And so if there's like an injured area or something like that, you'll often find a bunch of emotions in that area, especially if it's been a chronic kind of thing. So you'll see that emotions will wind up anywhere. So it could be in your big toe or in your ear or your shoulder, whatever. So these are just where they start. Okay. Now sometimes I will use this sometimes if I'm doing a bunch of trapped emotions and they're all on a certain row, and they're not just going all over the place, but they're all on a certain row, then I say, I wonder if there's an issue that I need to look at with that organ. And so sometimes there is. So like I'll use the body code to find out if there's something going on with the organ that's where we're getting too many of those emotions from that area. Okay, so surrogate and proxy treatment. Okay, everybody stand up. Okay, now grab hold of that. Okay, hold hands. Everybody hold hands. All the way across here. Okay, you ready?
Oh my gosh.
Do you see what's happening? We're making a circuit all the way around. Okay, so now I've seen this done with 100 people.
That's bizarre.
It doesn't matter how many people there are. So I wanted to just, you can sit down now, but I just wanted to demonstrate that this is how the energy is transmitted from person to person. So this is the idea behind surrogate treatment. A surrogate treatment is when you need to treat somebody else who you can't really treat them themselves. I most often use the surrogate treatment like for little babies and things, which usually just have inherited emotions. But surrogate treatment is where you're holding on to that person. Now the idea is that the energy is transmitted from person to person, and it's whoever's at the end. And usually there wouldn't be more like a chain, but just one person. So he gives the example of, like, if you have like 6 people, they hold hands and one of them grabs an electric fence, who is it that feels the shock? The last one. Yeah, the person at the end. Not the person grabbing it, it's the person at the end. And so I've never tried that little game, but I've heard that it works like that. So that's the principle. So, so like say, if I had someone at the table and they were holding hands with her, we'd really be working on her, not the person on the table. Okay? Yeah. So like if somebody was in a coma or they can move their legs or something like that. Yeah? So we can work it like so. And then also to get certified I had to work on a certain number of animals. And this is one way that you work on animals. Horses, cats, and dogs, people, those smarter animals, I guess, they do trap emotions. Yeah.
Can you do it at all without them being there?
Yes, then we go to proxy treatment. Okay, now proxy treatment, if anything I've said sounds crazy, then this will really sound crazy. With proxy treatment, you can set up a connection with somebody. So Brenda, let's have you come up here. Okay, so let's say we need to work on Dr. Joe. And so it doesn't have to be gender specific, but let's say Dr. Joe needs some work and he can't get into the office or he's far away. And so then we set up a proxy. So this is something I usually do use the muscle testing, but I can use the leg length. So say my name is Dr. Joe.
My name is Dr. Joe.
Okay, resist. Okay, so right now I have a connection set up with Dr. Joe. So for testing purposes, she is now Dr. Joe. I can lay her on the table, do anything I would do with Dr. Joe. You say my name is Brenda.
My name is Brenda.
Okay, okay, good. Right, so I just, they just say that, and then you just test them to make sure that they've made the connection.
Was she touching you when you were saying you're Dr. Joe? We couldn't.
Oh, I was
she
just,
touching you on the shoulder?
No,
Is it-
no.
Is it contact? It's not contact.
no, it's not contact, yeah.
Okay.
I was just confirming that she had made that connection.
Okay.
Now, it always amazes me that it's so easy to set up a connection. The only thing that I can think of is that we're already somewhat connected. I think everybody has a little bit of a connection between us. So you look at that from a spiritual standpoint, however you want it, but I think we all have a little bit of a connection. So the idea is that the person on the other end has given their permission to set up this connection. Or if it's a child or an animal, whoever's in charge of that. Now what's interesting about this work is that the distance doesn't matter. And I don't know if about another planet, but anywhere on this planet, it works.
You don't know people on your,
Right, I don't know of anybody. But it doesn't matter the distance. I have patients, well, Dr. Joe has patients in California and Idaho and Wyoming and all over the place. I have patients in Michigan and Nevada and Idaho and, yeah.
I do proxy work for my daughter in Brazil all the time.
Yeah, so she does it for Brazil. I have 2 patients in Spain. I have a patient in Holland. I worked on a lady in New Zealand. So anyway, it doesn't matter the distance. Now, I don't know exactly how this works, but it is interesting that I did see something on a TV show on Nova one time that may start to explain. I don't know if it's the same thing or not, but there's a principle in quantum physics called entanglement. What they've done is they take 2 particles and they entangle them. How they do it, I have no idea. But anyway, they take they can get these particles entangled, and so then they separate them and they take one to another laboratory hundreds of miles away. And whatever they do on this particle is reflected on that particle. This is something they're doing right now that the scientists are doing. So is that the same thing? I don't know. But it just shows that these kind of energetic connections can be made and the changes happen. And so I have these patients in other countries that I've never met, but yet they're getting great results with the work that I do, the emotion code, the body code. And so we're getting great results with this. So that's proxy treatment.
Are there any conditions that proxy treatment won't work for, that if you had the hair first and it would make a difference?
I haven't found any. Have you seen any limitations? I haven't seen any.
So what is the potential for this? I mean, could you help like someone with mental illness? Because it seems like a lot of them are like traumatic experience, traumatic. I mean,
Yeah.
is this a potential for helping like veterans and stuff?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, in fact, Dr. Nelson devotes part of his website to PTSD. And so, yeah, it definitely helps with emotional problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
What about brain injuries? If I have a brain injury.
Yeah. It can. I mean, I don't yet know the limitations of this. We don't say that this is a cure-all, but I don't know what its limitations are. I've never run up against something that says, oh, it's not going to work on this. So it might help. I don't know.
I take it with the approach that it either help you or you'll just be the same as you already are.
Right.
So
I've never seen anybody get worse with this kind of work. Now, there is something that people go through we call emotional detoxification. So I have had people go out of the office bawling or that cry all the next day. I have seen that quite often. Is you're working through things and like I'll try not to have the sessions like 2 days in a row usually. I want to give them a little time to adjust in between.
Is there any way to lessen detox? Sometimes they're bad.
Yeah, water helps. water water carries energy, and so if you drink a lot of water, it helps dissipate that energy.
Exercise can help.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the dogs? Right now, I'm very angry at mine, and I have to go home and
Yeah.
figure out how to make up with them, so.
Well, yeah, Dr. Nelson, in his book, he has a whole chapter about animals.
Okay.
Like he said, there was a horse that was, I'm trying to remember what the problem was. He wouldn't eat, or there was some kind of health problem he found, and then turned out that he saw
Wasn't it a bird?
a bird get killed,
Uh-huh.
and ever since then, he wasn't right. So they cleared the emotion, and then he was okay. So, you know, but like I said, I had to work on dogs and cats, things like that, in order to get certified. But I don't typically do it.
So you can work on her to make her dogs be waiting for her when she gets home nicely?
I don't know about training them, but but we can see if there's trapped emotions that are getting in the
They
way.
just chew things, and I'm gone.
Yeah.
So that was the issue.
Yeah,
with
so
it.
I don't know. If
Yeah.
it's related to a trapped
But-
emotions, then you could help it.
So,
If it's just a training issue, I don't know.
so how do you touch them, or what?
Yeah, you can.
What's the process?
Yeah, you can do a surrogate or proxy.
Okay.
So a surrogate is where you're working on somebody who's actually holding the animal, or
Okay.
or touching it, in physical contact with it. That's surrogate treatment. Proxy treatment is a person can just take on that role. So like you being the owner of the dog says, okay, yes, I give permission, and so then, you know, the person just say, okay, I am, and they use the dog's name, and
Is it possible to find out, are they trapping an emotion that makes them to your couch? You know,
that's
I
what you
wanna
start
see
with.
this.
Yeah, that's what you start with. You start with the yes or no question. Is there a trapped emotion associated with this behavior? And so then you'd ask what it is. That's what you always start with. Is there a trapped emotion that's associated with whatever issue you're looking at? Okay, so so these things you definitely will not find in the book. These are things that that I've found through practice. You have to understand that not all trapped emotions are created equal. As you read the book, it almost sounds like they're kind of two-dimensional, like one emotion is the same as another emotion, but they're not. They're not the same. So sometimes when I clear trapped emotions, it feels like something really huge, or sometimes a person will have a big detoxification after clearing that trapped emotion, and other times it's like, oh yeah, that was nice, you got rid of that emotion. Most of the time when you release a trapped emotion, they just feel a little lighter, a little happier. But sometimes it's something big, and so they're not created equal. So we have to understand that and they don't always come out as easily as other ones. Some are deep, some are very superficial. In the body code, we talk about deep resonance. So a trapped emotion, you can think of it as a little ball of energy. That little ball of energy has gone somewhere in the body or is somehow affecting the mind. But a deep resonance is through the whole body. And the way that Dr. Nelson talks about it is like, if you have a great big bell, and you hit it with a hammer, it goes bong, and then it gradually dies down until you don't hear it anymore. But you can come back a few minutes later and listen very, very closely. You'll still hear that frequency. And that goes on for quite a while. And so a deep resonance is like, it's like a trapped emotion that's through your whole body. It's just kind of resonating. And so a lot of times they're associated with some kind of trauma. And so,
Do you find that with people like with fibromyalgia? Things that-
yeah, sometimes, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, they can have the ones that are deeper are sometimes harder to get out. Like I said, you roll it till it feels right, and sometimes you're just not getting anywhere. And so usually what I do is the Chinese method of getting rid of trapped emotions is with the breath. And so what I'll do is while I'm rolling the magnet, I'll have them take a deep breath and pull all of that emotion into their breath, and then blow it out and let it go. And I'll do that several times as I'm rolling the magnet. And so sometimes I have to do that a few times to get it to finally release. And so always, after you clear a trapped emotion, come back and ask, is that trapped emotion still there? You're referring to that specific trapped emotion that you just got rid of. And so always confirm that you got rid of it. And if you didn't, then you have to go back and do more work on it. Okay, there can be layers. Sometimes you'll clear a trapped emotion and the body says, yeah, it's gone, but it's like, something's not right. Something is not, it doesn't feel complete, you know what I mean? And so then you can come back and say, is there an underlying trapped emotion? And so sometimes there'll be these underlying trapped emotions. And sometimes emotions can be linked together. In the body code, he talks about what's called a psychic trauma. And this is usually a pair of emotions that come together. And so, like sometimes if you're asking, is it in column A? Yes. Is it in column B? Yes. Wait a minute. It's supposed to be one or the other. And you find out, you say, it may be a pair of emotions, and so you find out each one to get, find out what both of them are, and then you clear them together. Like panic and fear, you do it together. Okay? And then, so that was the psychic trauma. Now, something I've discovered fairly recently about chains of emotions. Now, this is a very interesting way to approach it. And this is the hardest kind of trapped emotion to get rid of. But you can, the idea is that if you have a trapped emotion early on, it can lead to another trapped emotion, which leads to another trapped emotion, which leads to another trapped emotion. And in the subconscious mind somehow keeps track of these links between them. And so it may not be physically a chain, but in the way the subconscious mind looks at it, it could be looked at as a chain. So in that case, what I do is I look for the anchoring emotion. I find out what the root emotion is, what that first one is. And then I find out how many emotions are in that chain. I've had them up as high as 70 emotions. And I don't identify all those emotions. I just say, okay, what's the anchoring emotion and how many are there? And so then I'll release the anchoring emotion and the chain. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. Usually I always have to do the breathing technique. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 attempts. Sometimes I have to find the underlying emotion for that anchoring emotion. And anyway, it's.
You use the chart for that then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I use a chart to find the anchoring emotion, but I just don't identify all the ones in the chain.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, this is something that I've just recently started doing, and it's a very difficult one to do. But
After you did that to me the other day,
Uh-huh.
pulled out the chain,
right,
then I was like, were you tired or was I tired?
I was tired. I don't know about you, but I was tired. Yeah,
So, like, cause you said, okay, that's all
yeah,
you can have.
yeah. So one of the things I didn't mention is that when you're doing an emotion code session on somebody, you can only do so many emotions. It depends on how big the emotions are, how emotionally stable they are at the time, will determine how many emotions you can get rid of. So usually, 7 or 8, maybe 10 emotions, then you max out, and the body just won't give you anymore because it needs time to adjust. And so it maxes out at a certain point. If you do a chain, it just maxes them out like that. And so you can ask about that emotion you just cleared and find out about that as you get rid of the chain. But if you ask you about any other trapped emotions, you get no response. It's just totally maxed out right then.
What are you looking for to find out if they have a chain of emotions?
If it's something that, like you're finding a lot of emotion in a particular area, you can ask if there's a chain. Or if there's having a really big problem with a certain thing, then you can ask if there's a chain. A lot of times there is not a chain, and the chains aren't real common, but you can always ask if there's a chain. Okay, so let's look at some things that can interfere with good testing. One is that if the neck is out of alignment. Now here's where it comes in really handy to be a chiropractor. because I can fix that. You can do some with that. I mean, you can focus on balancing the neck, and that not quite as good as a chiropractic adjustment, but it will help. But that, if the upper neck is out of alignment, then that means the brain is not able to communicate with the rest of the body as well. And so that's why that can interfere. Okay, another thing is that if you're dehydrated, if you don't have enough water, there's been times where I'm asking people a question and I'm just not hardly getting anything. I'll have them go get a drink of water and come back, and then it works much better after that. But even as you as the tester, if you're dehydrated, you won't be able to do as well. Remember, this is energy work, so you need that water to carry the energy. Okay, now this is something that I've discovered. Part of the body code is to ask if there's spirit out of body. Now this can be kind of confusing, but you know, if the spirit is totally out of the body, you're dead, right? But it can be a little bit out. Just, I don't know how, I can't explain it from a physics standpoint or anything, or how much of it is out, but you can have some spirit out of body. And so sometimes when I'm doing my testing, I'm starting getting answers just all over the place. Things just aren't making any sense. There's no logic in what I'm finding, or it's yes on everything, it's no on everything. It just doesn't make any sense. And so then I will ask, is there spirit out of body? Yes. So Dr. Nelson recognizes this, but one of the things that he hadn't thought about was what's causing the spirit out of body. But I generally find there's a strong trapped emotion associated with the spirit out of body. And so there is a way in the body code to bring the spirit back into the body all the way, but I find that if you don't clear the trapped emotion that's associated with it, it pushes it out again. So I will say, so I just automatically now, if I get a yes on the spirit out of body, I say, okay, what's the emotion that's causing it? It'll always give me an emotion. And so I clear that emotion, and then a lot of times I don't even have to put the spirit back, it just comes back automatically. And then you can even go a step further, because if sometimes people are, if they're really traumatized or really stressed out, their spirit just keeps jumping out all the time. Then you can ask, you can be a little proactive and say, is there a trapped emotion that's trying to make your spirit go out of your body? And you can kind of get it under control that way.
Have you found a pattern that it's generally with people who are in extreme pain or anything?
No.
The spirit doesn't want to stay there because the body is
Not pain, not usually pain, it's usually emotional trauma. Yeah. People have who've had a lot of emotional trauma, that's where I see it. If somebody comes in saying they feel all discombobulated, that's the first thing I ask. Because that's the most common way to describe the feeling of having spirit out of body. You just don't feel yourself, you just feel off. You're just discombobulated. That's a good way to describe it. Yes, it is.